In today's video, we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series. We're now at the 12th ranked team for the NHL's regular season, the Ottawa Senators. They took a big leap in the standings this past year and made the playoffs for the first time in 8 seasons. Now the big question is, how do they build upon that? How can they make this team better and maintain and improve what they had last year? So today we're going to take a look at their internal business for the offseason, what we should expect from them at the draft, free agency, as far as trades. We'll discuss all that and see how they improve coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the offseason plan for the 12th ranked team in the NHL's regular season, the Ottawa Senators. They certainly took a big jump in the standings, made the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, and now they have to get to work to see if they can build upon that. And obviously, that was the first step in many, and now they have a lot of big questions, like most teams, on what do they do internally, how do they consider bringing in other bodies to help take this a step further, and so on. So we're going to first start by recapping the 24-25 season, take a look at their key team stats, take a look at some key individual stats, goaltending, top scorers, then take a look at how this team changed throughout the year, their cap space, internal business, draft, free agency, any trades we could expect, etc., and go from there. So let's start by first recapping the 24-25 campaign for those Ottawa Senators. So they had a 97-point season, got into the playoffs as the wildcard one team in the Eastern Conference. Pretty solid year overall. As much as it might seem like there's a big gap between Ottawa and Florida now, considering the Panthers are, for the third straight year, in the Stanley Cup final, they were only 1 point difference in the regular season. They almost got up into third place. One more win would have made the trip there to jump them up one more spot, would have changed the whole playoff picture completely. But they had a record of 45, 30, and 7, so it's a big jump. A 19-point improvement on the previous season, where they won 37 games, had 41 losses, and 4 overtime losses for only 78 points. So it's a big jump. They scored 242 goals, 19th best in the league. There is room to improve upon that. They, of course, were higher scoring the year before with 255 goals. So that is a drop of 13 goals year over year. But, of course, as we know, with new head coach Travis Green, he wanted to change the way this team played. He wanted to change a lot of the systems, wanted to change how the focus was, and put more of a focus on team defense, not just the defenders, not just the goalies, but the forwards, everybody, on how to play a better, stronger team game. That strategic focus started partway through last season after they fired DJ Smith and had Jacques Martin take over along with Daniel Alfredson for part of the year to try to break a lot of those bad habits and try to set this team up to learn some hard lessons and some new ways on how to win. So much that this team really made big strides. Even though they scored a little bit less on the offensively, defensively they were significantly better, only allowing 232 goals. Now that might not be a wow factor. It was 20th in the league, but the year before they were lower and they allowed 281. So that's a 49 goal improvement on the goals against side. That is significant. They obviously went out and they spent some trade assets, improving their goaltending, acquiring former Vezina Trophy winner Linus Ullmark. He might have had a little bit of an adjustment period, slower start, but he came on strong and was a huge piece and a huge part of the Senators' improvement in that area. But the overall team defense, the D-core was better, the forwards were better defensively, and it all showed in that 49 goal improvement on the goals against. So all in all, that's a plus 36 difference in their plus minus as a team. That's pretty significant when you think about it. Their power play was really strong, 23.8%, 11th best. There was a big chunk of the year where it was top 5. And I believe they were certainly ranked in that at home as well. The home power play was even one of the best in the league. So clearly between the road power play being a little lower and having a few dry spells like most teams would from now and again, the power play was a big part of their offense. The penalty kill still needs work, but it was somewhat okay, 77.7 for 19th best. So a little bit below average. That is certainly an area that really bit them in the playoffs against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the penalty kill is an area of focus if I'm Ottawa this offseason, and maybe it's I don't think that they need to do a lot. To me, I think they have some of the pieces there with the Sens that can maybe be change the deployment of a few players and maybe just change the mix in their fourth line just a little bit to get maybe even one more extra, player who's good on the penalty kill or something. But yeah, it's definitely an area of focus for sure. Goaltending, let's take a look at that. Linus Ullmark led the way with 25 wins, 14 losses, and 3 overtime losses. 2.72 goals against and a .910 save percentage. So is it Vezina Trophy worthy? No, but you got to factor in anybody on a new team is going to have an adjustment phase, and he certainly did. And he had a few times where he struggled, but he also was red hot for long stretches as well. Overall, had a good first season in Ottawa, and I do expect him to build upon that. Anton Forsberg also kind of had his moments where he wasn't a reliable backup. Then he had his moments where he was really good. All in all, I think I think we can sum up his season by saying it was okay. He gave them average goaltending more often than not. His record was 11, 12, and 3, 272 goals against, the same as Linus, and a .901 save percentage. Levi Merilainen came up, of course, during a phase when Linus was hurt, and he was outstanding in a record of 8-3-1 with a 199 goals against and a .925 save percentage. He might have saved their season, to be completely honest, during that stretch of games when Ullmark was out injured. If Merilainen comes up and doesn't do that, and Forsberg is what he has, they might lose 4 or 5 of those games. And 4 or 5 of those games might be the difference here of about 8 to 10 points, and that might mean the difference between making the playoffs and not. Merilainen might not get a ton of credit, but those games he played were crucial, and he passed with flying colors, and will certainly build upon that next year, hopefully. Looking at the team's individual scoring leaders, Timmy Stützle, of course, led the way again, 79 points. Drake Batherson, number 2 at 68. Jake Sanderson, 57. Brady Tkachuk, 55, but of course he missed a bunch of time as well after the Four Nations, leading into the break. Or after the break, Brady Tkachuk was injured at Four Nations, as we know, and missed a bunch of time down the stretch. And Giroux with 50 points rounds us out. But Tkachuk certainly, I suspect, would have been at least 65, 70 points, if not more. But you got to remember, some of these numbers, except for maybe like Sanderson was good, Batherson, I believe was a career high in points. Stützle was down a bit, Tkachuk was down a bit, Giroux was down. But you got to remember, they had to completely change the way they played, especially Timmy and Brady. So for them to be, still putting up pretty decent numbers and having much better defensive numbers and the team improving, it's a big jump for sure. So this team also made some changes throughout the year. They obviously made a couple of big trades, trading a long-time Senator and fan favorite Josh Norris, and along with Jacob Bernard-Docker to the Buffalo Sabres for Dylan Cousins, Dennis Gilbert, and a draft pick. So, clearly that was an emotional day for the team, but Cousins has been a pretty good fit. Gives them a different look at center ice as a bigger right-handed shot, more physical center. So obviously one thing though, Norris was trusted more in a penalty kill and more shorthanded. So that's the one trade-off there, which I guess obviously with the PK needing work is the area they need to focus on to build that back up. They obviously picked up Fabian Zetterlund from the Sharks as well for a trade that involved one of their younger players, Zach Ostapchuk. Zetterlund showed times that he looked really good, and I suspect he'll get more of an opportunity to play a bigger role for the coming season. And so far this offseason, before we got to this video, they've already done some early work. Steve Staios already re-signing RFA defenseman Tyler Clevin to a 2-year deal, $1.6 million, and another steal of a deal in my opinion. I started the year as a number 7 guy in the minors, got the call up during injuries, but Nicholas Matanpalo was a phenomenal find for a right shot third pair defenseman. Gets a 2-year extension at $875. So with Clevin signed and Matanpalo, and they paired a lot last year. They also have played a lot previously together in the minors. So those two have actually spent a lot of time playing together the past couple of seasons between the AHL and the NHL, and to have that third pair locked up for the next couple of years, just over $2 million, is a nice piece of work for steady Steve Staios. Now, going into this full offseason here, they have, after those signings, just over $15 million in cap space. They have 16 contracts on the books for next year, and they do have some, decisions to make for sure. Let's take a look at their internal business before we get into trades, free agency, and the draft. Looking at the restricted free agents, that includes recently acquired forward, as we just talked about, Fabian Zetterlund. He needs new deals on RFA, and of course, Levi Merilainen, another big piece, obviously playing a 11 NHL games with some good results. Should get him a bit of a bump up in pay, but I suspect we're probably going to see, I'm not sure what they'll end up doing. I think if I'm Steve Staios, I'd probably like to see a 2 or 3 year contract where he can grow into it, but to take advantage of the fact that he's not super established, so you might be able to get him on a lower number. If you compare him with Ullmark next year, which I believe right now is the plan, then you should be able to offset with Ullmark's extension kicking in at $8 million. If you can get Merrilainen, I don't know what the number is going to be. Maybe it's 1 point something, then that certainly would help. And then Donovan Sabrango, who saw limited NHL action last year, was a piece that came over in the DeBrincat trade, actually from Detroit, as a local product, and has actually improved his game substantially, in my opinion. Shown to be a good leader and a good piece for the Belleville team, and has gotten a little bit of NHL time as a call-up during some times when they faced some injuries, and actually didn't do too bad. I thought the kid did all right. A little bit of an older prospect right now, but certainly somebody who I think should stick around in the organization. On the UFA side, of course, that's highlighted by Claude Giroux. The Claude father needs a new contract after being arguably probably the best UFA signing the team has ever had. After 3 years, it's time for a new deal. And the belief is there's lots of mutual interest between both sides to bring him back. The Sens have been pretty emphatic they want Claude to return. It's just a matter of finding the contract and getting a deal done. At this point, I don't think we have any reason to believe that he won't be back, but it's a matter of going through the process. We've got Adam Gaudette, Anton Forsberg. I suspect we might have seen the end of Forsberg, but if depending on what else he has out there in the market, if they can squeeze him in on a 1 year cheap contract, if he's willing to stick around and give Merrilainen some competition, I would consider that. But I think that their market is not real deep in goaltending this year in free agency. I suspect that he's going to have more options to make more money and get more term. And as much as he's been a good soldier for the Sens, I think his time is probably up. Travis Hamonic, I suspect, is not going to be back. You can't. I know the fan base gives it to him a lot and was frustrated at times with how much he played. But one thing you can't take away from him is how hard he played. He represented that logo with the work ethic you would want. Unfortunately, towards the end of his time here, it just doesn't have the abilities like he used to, and unfortunately, I think it's probably time that he hang him up. But we'll see. He might try to extend his career, and we'll see. But I think he's done with the Senators. Dennis Gilbert came over from Buffalo. I'm not sure if there's interest there. I mean, he's probably only a 7D at most in Ottawa, so. Nick Cousins and Matthew Highmore, another couple of UFAs. I think that there's probably interest to bring back Cousins on a similar deal he signed last year. He came in as a UFA, signed 1 year. I think it was $875 or something like that. I can see that happening again. Highmore, I mean, maybe. He's a good veteran to have around for Belleville with some call-up action, but I just don't think he can. To me, he's not a full-time NHLer. He can have spot duty as a call-up, but if they keep him around, I'm okay with it. I think it's a possibility that they might do it, but they have to make sure that they're not relying on him too much. So that's your UFA. So out of the UFAs, Giroux, I think, is the most likely one to return, with Cousins being a probable. Gaudette, the latest information on Adam Gaudette was there is interest on both sides of return. I think he would acknowledge that he had a breakout season, and maybe he won't find that the grass is greener on the other side. But the Sens can't afford to give him too much term and money like another team might be willing to do. I don't know. So it's hard to say. He's a big question mark there, and the rest of them probably don't come back. As far as contract extensions go, the main one is Shane Pinto. I think the Sens would like to get ahead of that one and get him locked up on a new deal so that they don't have any, difficult negotiations. He does have an agent that's notoriously likes to drag things on, so we'll see. So I suspect they're going to work hard at getting Pinto extended. Nick Jensen is also eligible, but I would suspect that for right now, they probably don't. I mean, you never know. Maybe they extend him, but he had a big hip surgery. He might not be ready to start the year. He's in his mid-30s. Wouldn't be surprising if they wait and see how things go at the start of the season before they make that decision, maybe do it mid-year. So I think Pinto's the main extension we're probably going to see out of Ottawa this offseason. And there's no rush. He's still RFA, But that's about the main one that we could see. As far as the top questions facing the team, well, of course, like I said, is the goaltending going to be Allmark and Marolainen next year? They have to determine the answer to that question and whether or not there's any chance in trying to bring back Forsberg. Like I said before, I think the only chance that happens is if for some reason the offers that are not there that he was hoping for in free agency, and he says, you know what, if I'll take a 1-year deal at $1 million or something, just to give that insulation in that competition for Marolainen. But I don't know. I suspect he'll be gone, and that the answer to that question is Allmark Marolainen going to be your tandem? Yes. My only concern is if somebody gets hurt next year, what then? And they get Mads Sogard, who so far unfortunately hasn't really been reliable, and he actually has a contract for next year, and it's actually a one-way deal. He's going to have to go through waivers. I don't see him beating out Marolainen, and that's a whole other issue there. So we'll have to determine what's the pecking order of goaltending. Right defense, with Nick Jensen's injury, I think there's some concern. They don't want to start the year getting behind the 8 ball, so I think they need to figure out a plan. If Jensen can't be there from the start, how do they handle that? I don't think they really have a lot of money to go and bring in a top 4 right-hand defenseman that can, be there like all the time. Like, to me, they need somebody to do spot duty, which probably makes more sense. Like, I'd be shocked if you saw them bring in, somebody on a long-term contract. I see the fan base saying, we need a top 4 right D. Like, well, you have Jensen. He's under contract, and he's probably going to play this year, like most of it, in fact. But, does Carter Yakimchuk get a look at a camp? Does maybe that's the answer? He can come in, play spot duty if Jensen's not ready, and then he can go to the minors afterwards. That's an option. Tyler Kleven could be elevated. He's played his offside before on the weak side, and he could do that even though he's a lefty. And then maybe you bring in another lefty to fill the left side with Matt and Powell on the third pair. So they're going to probably have to bring in a defenseman of some kind. I just don't think it's going to be somebody that's a big name with term. Maybe they'll shock me. I just don't see it happening. I think that's probably more of an issue for next year. And before they do that, they probably kind of want to wait and see the development of Yakimchuk first to see if maybe he's the solution there. So there's that. Of course, like I said, they had a big adjustment last year to how they played under Travis Green. They need to take everything they learned about the team defensive structure and try to add some more goals, especially 5-on-5 goals. So I think they could benefit from adding, if they can, a top 6 or top 9 scoring winger. I think they're pretty good down the middle. If they bring back Claude Giroux, then I think Giroux's role probably needs to be adjusted. The problem is you get a couple of aging veterans between not only Giroux, but you've got David Perron for another year. So they got to figure all this out. Where do you put Zetterlund so he can succeed more? You want to hang on to Zetterlund because he's a bigger piece for the future. Whereas you got Perron for one more year. Giroux might only play another year or two. You don't know, right? So you can't make too far ahead down the road. But getting another scorer would be significant. I think in free agency, maybe they tackle trying to sign a guy like Nick Ehlers or Brock Besser. I'm not sure. They were a couple of the main guys. Or they look to the trade market. Another player that I think might be available that I think would be a decent target would be like an Ivan Barbashev out of Vegas, like a player like that who we know has got the playoff experience, has got multiple Stanley Cups, knows what it takes to win, can play physical, can provide offense. That might be the type of player to look at as well. But to add somebody in that role, I think, is going to be critical to add some more goals here to the mix. Obviously, getting Giroux to re-sign will be big. In the draft, they're picking 21st overall. They could go in a number of different ways. To be honest, I think their prospect pool could benefit from a variety of positions. I think they could target one of the top-ranked goalies is expected to go in that probably 2025 range, Ravensburger. So maybe they go after him. If they want a big right shot defenseman, there's Blake Fiddler. I think he would be a good fit. Maybe there's Cole Rushney, forward of the Western League. They have some options there. They could probably get themselves a pretty decent prospect. Now, I don't suspect they'll trade the pick, but you never know unless something comes up that is a no-brainer. I suspect that they're going to want to add to the prospect pool here for sure. I mean, we also heard all the chatter around Jason Robertson. We heard about Drake Batherson's name being out there, according to Bruce Garriock, where the owner certainly shut that down pretty good. I don't understand the fan base turning on Drake Batherson. It seemed like a lot of fans, because he had too many penalties in the first round against the Leafs, all of a sudden you hate this guy. He's a drafted and developed player. He's a big, rangy, right shot, playmaking winger. Does a lot of things that nobody else on your team can do. He was the second leading scorer on the team, and people are complaining he doesn't do enough 5-on-5. If you look at his numbers, about 45% of his points last year came on the power play. That's pretty good. Well, you know what? Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk had about 41% of their points on the power play too. It's not much difference, and really your power play, if you look at how they set it up, where he plays a combination of net front and down low, that right shot and how he does passing that he does, like, you don't have anybody else on the team who has that skill set to do that. So you move him, you lose that on your power play. You lose another guy in the room that's a big part of the core, has been growing up with these other players. They already went through an emotional loss with Josh Norris. I don't know if attacking that core and losing, to me, a unique player with a really good contract, you're getting almost 70 points for under $5 million. Now, I know Jason Robertson was a name that was out there as far as being targeted in a trade. And I know he's really good too. A different kind of player, good size, but he doesn't play that physical style. But, at the end of the day, if you can upgrade, you can upgrade. But to me, you need to add. I don't think you need to be subtracting. You need to add another really good forward who can do those offensive things for you, not subtracting. Otherwise, it's only a minor upgrade. If you look at trading a 70-some point player for an 80-some point player, it's an extra 10 goals. That's nice, but is it really going to help you long term, especially when the contract's $3 million more for next year, and his next contract's going to probably be well over 10 to 11 million probably on his next deal, whereas Batherson is under 5 for this one and one more. And then after that, hard to say where his next deal is going to be. Even if it goes up to $8 million or something, it's still not going to be at the level of Robertson. And to me, it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand the hate. I understand that you want more 5-on-5 offense, and he's 27, but he's still an improving, evolving player. They brought in Dylan Cousins, I think specifically to make that second line better. They had great chemistry. I think Cousins allowed, or actually not really allowed, but he helped Batherson play a much more physical game. You notice Batherson's game changed when Cousins arrived, and then first time in the playoffs, did he get a little overzealous, make a couple mistakes penalty-wise? He did, but was he the only one? No. So it's a learning experience. I don't understand fans who just you love a player and all of a sudden, a couple mistakes, let's get rid of him. He's no good anymore. Just complete insanity, in my opinion. I don't know. I see things from this player that the rest of the team doesn't have. And regardless if it's Batherson or anybody else, I don't understand some fandoms who they just turn on players so easy. Wow, craziness. But let me know your thoughts on the expectations for the Senators. I don't expect them to be super busy during free agency or trades, maybe a little bit. Like I said, they need to find another scoring winger. They can go one way or the other with that. Otherwise, I think you're going to see some internal business taken care of, hope for more growth, and maybe some smaller additions depth-wise. And then hopefully getting a good player at the draft as well. But I suspect maybe one big move. That's what I'm predicting for the Sens. I just don't know how they're going to go about getting that extra forward who can help them with the offense, whether it's trade or free agency. So we'll see. I think a trade might be more likely, but we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on the expectations for the Ottawa Senators and the offseason to get ready for 25-26 NHL season. Stay tuned for more videos in this series as well as all the other news and rumors around the entire NHL. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.